Good morning to everybody. How you doing? Hope all is well. Keep up the beautiful work. Today is Monday, Parashat Bishalach. The sun is coming out. We hope the weather stays nice. Hashem should watch all of Am Yisrael, Be'ezrat Hashem Itbarach, and show us good things. Bring home the hostages and the soldiers, and bring us all home to our ultimate home in Yerushalayim Habnuyah, Be'ezrat Hashem Itbarach. For those who didn't leave the house yet, the sidewalks and the steps are a little slippery when wet. So be very careful going downstairs and going outside. The weather will warm up in merit of you guys learning Torah. Kol hakavod. Yesterday was the yard site of the Baba Sali. Today is the yard site of my dear father, Aleva Shalom, Pinchas Ben Geras. The Divrei Torah will be Leilui Nishmato Be'ezrat Hashem Itbarach. Number one, we'll talk a little about the Baba Sali. His marriage should be a blessing for all of us. 3 days before, 3 days after, there's still aura from the Sadiq. We said a story from in Shul, but it's worthwhile of repeating over here on our chat. Many years ago, the Baba Sali passed away in 1984. In the 70s, before all you guys were born, there was a couple in Eretz Yisrael that could not have children for the longest time. God shall watch all of us and give us all the beracha when we want and the parties, Be'ezrat Hashem. Back then, the technology was not like today, and they were really hurting, and they were going from doctor to doctor, and it was to no avail. One day, they met the top doctor in Eretz Yisrael, and he told them they have zero chance of having children, Shema Israel. Imagine zero, not even 1% zero. And the doctor said, if you do a certain procedure, which is an exorbitant amount of money, it will bring you from a 0% chance to a 4% chance, but nothing to write home about. And it's obviously the chances are still not that great. Do you want to do that procedure? Number one, they didn't have money back then. Also, for bring it from 0 to 4 isn't much, right? Some people have cars, instead of going from 0 to 80 in 3 seconds, it goes from about 0 to 4 in about 8 seconds. But that was the old punch buggy action. But anyway, back to our subject. He didn't know what to do, and his heart was broken. Him and his wife, they wanted children, and he goes to the kotel to pour out his heart to Borei Olam. He's crying and he's crying and praying to Hashem. Next to him was standing a very prestigious looking Sadiq. It was not the Baba Sali, but close. It was the Baba Sali's son-in-law. The Baba Sali's son-in-law tells him, asks him, why are you crying? Is everything okay? What could I do to help you? And he told him his entire story. The Baba Sali son-in-law said, listen, I'm the son-in-law of the Baba Sali. I don't know if you heard of the Baba Sali. He said he heard of him. He says, trust me, if you go to the Baba Sali, you will have a Yeshua, you will have a salvation, and you will have children, and you won't have to pay all that kind of money. He told him where the Baba Sali is. That the Baba Sali did all the tzaddikim do. You don't have to, but it's a customary to give a little tzedakah as what we call a pidyon nefesh, and the chachamim and the tzaddikim, they give it out to worthy tzedakot. So he says, no problem. And he goes. It was an entire day ordeal to get to the Baba Sali. Why? Because, like we said, the transportation back then in the 70s in Israel wasn't like it is today. Today, the bus drivers drive on the sidewalks. Back then, they did not drive on the sidewalks, and they didn't get there as fast. The fellow lived in a town called Migdal Emek, recommended on our next trip to go visit Migdal Emek, to go visit the Disco Rebbe, as they call him. Oh, if they didn't call it him, I would never say it. Rabbi Grossman, he should live and be well. What a malach, what a tzaddik. Rabbi Grossman was very, very close to the Baba Sali growing up. People used to call him from all over the world as a youngster. Go to the Baba Sali, tell him this, tell him that, etc. Long story short, The fellow leaves Migdal Emek, and the next day he goes and takes a bus to Tel Aviv. Then he goes from Tel Aviv to Ashdod. Then he goes from Ashdod to Netivot, all the way to the home of the Baba Sali. It was nighttime. It took an entire day for him to get there. And then Hazit, when he gets to the Baba Sali's house, the rabbi is not home. He went to visit his son who was under the weather, Baba Meir, another great holy malach, which we'll talk about another time. Be'ezrat Hashem Itbarach. He said if he goes back home, another day to get home, another day to come back, he's going to sleep in the area. There was the Yeshiva Tanegev over there, and he goes and he asked them, could I sleep in the dormitory? They said, Faddalu, and he slept there. He borrowed tefillin the next day, and he goes as early as possible to the Chacham's house. There was already a few people online, but thank God he was early on the line. And when he gets into the rabbi, he busts out crying, and he tells the rabbi his entire situation, that the doctor said, etc. And he tells him, do not do any procedures. He takes his stick and he hits it on the desk. And I mentioned in synagogue, Hacham Ovadia inherited the stick of the Baba Sali, Yishtabach Shemo La'ad, and it's in Hacham Ovadia's home. We'll make that on the trip or roster as well on the itinerary to go visit the home of Hamad. Anyway, he goes and the rabbi takes his stick, hits it on the desk a bunch of times, and he says, you're going to have a baby boy this year. And he says, thank you, Rabbi. He kisses his hand. He goes back. A few weeks later, his wife is expecting. And of course, about 9 months later, he had a baby boy, Baruch Hashem. He went to buy a case of arat, and he traveled all the way back to the Baba Sali. He took all the buses like he did before, from Tel Aviv to Ashdod, Ashdod to Netivot, and he gets to the rabbi's house. And he goes to the rabbi, waits online once again, and this time he has a smile from ear to ear. He's dancing inside and he's dancing outside, and he says, Rabbi, I brought you a case of arat. Thank you so much. I came to tell you good news that he had a baby boy. The rabbi was so emotional and he couldn't believe it. He said, do you know how many people come for berachot, but they don't come to tell me the good news afterwards? They only cry to me and they don't tell me the good news that comes out. Hamavadia, the same thing. He used to say, people ask me to pray, ask me for a beracha, but they don't come to tell me the good news. The rabbis want to hear the good news also. Why should they only hear the echa and not the Simchat Torah? So the Baba Sali was so happy that someone came to tell him good news, and he was showing appreciation to the messenger of Hashem that made him have a child. The Baba Sali says, with that stick again hitting the desk, not only are you going to have more besorot to tell me, but you're going to have plenty and plenty of besorot tovot to tell me good tidings and good news. And he said, thank you. A person who wasn't able to have children, where the doctors said it's a 0% chance, and if he does the procedure, it's a 4% chance. He ended up having 14 children. Abal everyone, Yishtabach Shemo La'ad. Yad HaChazaka, 14. And Shalom with Beracha, and he named his last son Yisrael Meir. Yisrael after the Baba Sali himself, and Meir after Baba Meir, the son of Baba Sali. Zechutam Yagen Alenu Be'ezrat Hashem Yitbarach. So you could still do things Lilu Nishmat Baba Sali, even though the yahrzeit was yesterday. Put $1 in the epat today, and I'll learn a little from Sefer and his merit, and Bezrat Hashem we will have beracha. So like I mentioned, today is my father's yahrzeit as well. Pinchas Ben Gerez will tell you something as well. From him, he used to love to say this riddle to people. How do you have two twin baby boys born? that, and everyone's healthy, nobody's yellow, everything's perfect, that one baby that's the older one, his bris is later than the younger one. Usually the bris of the older brother goes first and the younger brother goes second. How could it be? And yes, like I said, everyone is healthy, everything is perfect. And the answer is, if we know if a baby boy is born only on a Friday night, does this come into halakha, halachic dilemma? If a baby boy is born on Friday evening within 13 minutes after sunset, in the time we call a twilight zone, what we call Ben Hashemashot, we do not know what that time is. Is that time the day before? Is it the day after? And because of that, we take the stringencies of both. For example, Friday afternoon, Friday evening, Shabbat begins earlier. We consider that for the previous, the upcoming day, and for Saturday night, it's the previous day. Why? If it's for the next day, then it should always be the next day. If it's for the previous day, it should always be. But we take the stringencies of both because we don't know. So if a baby is born in Ben Hashemashot on a Friday evening in the twilight zone, there's plenty of people that I might know that were born in the twilight zone. How you doing? But we're not going to go there, of course, because we love everyone, Baruch Hashem. But if a baby was born in the twilight zone, so his Brit Milah on Friday night is not on Shabbat. It's not on Friday. They make the Milah Sunday. It's not on Friday because what if it's really Shabbat? And it's not Shabbat because you can't be Mahalel Shabbat unless you're 100% sure that the baby was born on Shabbat. And therefore, the Milah of that child is on a Sunday. So it's possible to have twin baby boys. The older brother came out of the womb in Ben Hashemashot in the twilight zone. And since it's in the twilight zone, his bris is going to be on Sunday. And the next brother that comes out, he comes out after Ben Hashemashot's over on Vadai Shabbat, and since it's for sure Shabbat, his milah is on Shabbat. So there's two Brit Milahs. He has to check line twice. How you doing? That should be our biggest problem of making parties, as many parties as possible, inshallah, by everyone. So Brit Milah, the first one, not the first boy, but the first bris will be on Shabbat. The second one will be Sunday, but the first one will be the younger brother, and the next one will be the older brother, as mentioned. That's a riddle he used to always like to say. It should be a merit for everyone. Be'ezrat Hashem Yitbarach. We're continuing the laws of Pesukei de Zimra. Pesukei de Zimra are all the chapters of Tehillim, which we say in between Baruch She'amar and Yishtabach. The rabbis on Knesset Agdolah instituted the Pesukei de Zimra, and they, of course, made the text and formed the text of the Berachot, of all the Berachot, including Baruch She'amar and Yishtabach. Our rabbis tell us how Madhyah says that Vayosha and Az Yashir, which is in this week's parasha, Bezrat Hashem, this Shabbat is Shabbat Shira, and some have the custom to sing Vatikach Miriam Haneviyah after Az Yashir, but Havadia wasn't too for that. If someone wants to say it, let them say it after. We're going to read it in the parasha or say it before, because we don't like to add things in between Baruch She'amar and Yishtabach, and for sure from Baruch through the Amidah. So therefore, Havadia says it's better not to say it. But if you're in a synagogue where it was the custom to always say it, and it's authentic, then they can continue saying it. Havadia says if it's possible without World War III breaking out, God forbid, that someone could tell them better not to in a nice way, then that would be preferable. But if not, then they continue saying it. And I believe there are some synagogues that still say Vatikach Miriam Hanaviyah. But anyway, back to our subject. Vayosha and Az Yashir were added after. If somebody is running late, they're allowed to skip that and say it after the Amidah. A lot of people know it by heart, so you could say it in the car on the way to work or whatever it is. This way you can make it up. Kabbalistically, when we miss and skip certain things because we want to make them minyan, and could be we were running late, of course, for good reasons, then according to Kabbalah, we don't re-say it. Because according to the Kabbalah, you're building worlds, you're building floors, and if you skip the third floor, how could you go and put it after you already built the sixth floor? So the Mekubalim say no, but the Halacha says yes, you do make it up after, as long as it's not a beracha, you could say it after. If somebody, for whatever reason it is, did not say Baruch She'amar and Yishtabach before they said Baruchu and Yotzer Or, then they do not say Baruch She'amar and Yishtabach after the Amidah. You are allowed to say Mizmor LeTodah, BTW. You should always say Mizmor LeTodah. Be thankful to Hashem. The more thankful we are, the more He'll give us Bezrat Hashem. But you're allowed to say Mizmor LeTodah, Yehi Chevod, all of the chapters of the Tehillim, but just don't say Baruch She'amar and Yishtabach after Amidah. We also mentioned in the past, speaking about Baruch She'amar and Yishtabach, according to Rabino Grande, Sephardic women do not say, if they want to cook rice on Pesach, then they have to follow Sephardic tradition throughout. And that is, they'd rather just go away for Pesach, but we'll talk about that another time. But that's women in Wisconsin. Our women love cooking, love cleaning, love doing things, and keeping the tradition, Baruch Hashem, of our ancestors. Long story short, because Baruch She'amar and Yishtabach are berachot of a mitzvat aseh shehazman gerama, even though it's not from the Torah, but it's from the Chachamim. Hamadia says women do not say the berachot, Hashem's name in the berachot of Baruch She'amar, of Yishtabach, of Yotzer Or, all of the berachot that we say before Amidah, of V'yatziv v'nachon, Baruch Atah Hashem Gal Yisrael. The women do not say Hashem's name in the beracha. They're allowed to say it without Hashem's name. If they want to say Baruch Atah Melech Me'ula Batishbahot, they're allowed to, but they're not allowed to say Hashem's name, because we know a woman that's not obligated should not say, in a mitzvah, should not say the beracha with Hashem's name. Or when a woman wants to sit in the sukkah, she's allowed to, of course, but is she allowed to make the beracha? Absolutely not. Is she allowed to shake lulav and make beracha? Absolutely not. If she wants to shake lulav, she's allowed to, but she's not allowed to with the beracha according to Sephardic tradition. According to Ashkenaz tradition, they go like Rabbeinu Tam, and they are allowed to say berachot, and therefore they could say Baruch She'amar Yishtabach Yotzer Or, and etc. That could be why many of our schools over the years, they were telling the girls to make those berachot, and they're all making the berachot in the tefillah. And today you tell the older women not to, and it's very hard because they're so used to saying it all those years. But a lot of things were instituted because it could be they were Ashkenaz Morot at the time, and yet that should be the biggest problem of our community. Baruch Hashem, they're praying and they're doing, and when a woman prays, the prayer goes up. They pray from the heart, Yishtabach Shemo La'ad, and that's one of the reasons why they only pray once a day instead of 3 times a day. But anyway, when a woman does pray, she cannot say Baruch She'amar or Yishtabach or Yotzer Or, etc. with Hashem's name, because they can't say those berachot. So also, if a person finished the Amidah and they did not say those, obviously we know even on Shabbat, especially weekday, a person can't go into Shacharit. If they're up to the Amidah, go straight to the Amidah. You would have to first say at least Yotzer Or, and then etc. Because you have to be Somech Geula Litfilah. In our beat time, where the Geula Litfilah is not as important, then you're allowed to just go into a shul. If they're up to Amidah when you walk in, then you pray Amidah together with them. And then after Amidah, you could say the beginning part that we missed with all the berachot and the Shema. But in the morning Shaharit, a person cannot do that. Once, if he said Amidah, just Amidah, then for whatever reason, let's say he was sick in bed and he said Amidah, and later he felt good, he wanted to say the rest. There's no more saying the rest with Hashem's name, because it's a way of building up to the Amidah, and therefore, once a person says it, they cannot. Once a person skipped it, they cannot say it anymore. We also know, since you make a beracha in the beginning of Pesukei de Zimra, and at the end, you're not allowed to talk in middle. But if a person does talk, they do not have to go back and to the beginning. For example, if a person is drinking a cup of tea and he makes shakol, and then he says, "How are the Yankees doing?" and he didn't drink from it yet, and he has to make a new beracha. Some people might say that that's part of Judaism. No, just kidding. But anyway, you do have to go back and make a new beracha. But when it comes to Pesukei de Zimra, a person does not have to do it in that fashion. We'll stop here for today. We'll continue with the help of Hashem tomorrow. We hope everyone has the greatest day. Keep up the beautiful work. May the tzaddikim, their blessings and their merit be a blessing for all of us. Be'ezrat Hashem, and may we hear good news today and every day. Take care. Have the best day. Bye.